figured if materialism is it, if it's just about getting stuff, I'll get stuff. I get my life back on track. I'll focus on the comedy, and I'll work on getting a career going again. And I still had a fairly good reputation in the club world. And anyway, I decided that that's what I'll do. So I'm working now. I'm focused on this. And now we're golfing, him and I. And I asked him, how do you accumulate wealth? Nobody ever taught me how to accumulate wealth. I mean, wealth. And he said, in order to even enjoy the creation, you have to have a relationship with the Creator. And I thought, boy, that sounds neat, you know, like New Agey. It sounded New Agey. So I said, where's that at? He goes, it's in the Bible. Oh, okay. A couple holes went by. Said something else. I go, that's great. Where'd you read that? He goes, it's in the Bible. I said, stop it with the Bible. He goes, what do you mean? I go, I mean, really, who reads the Bible? He said, I do. I go, really? He goes, what's your problem? I go, I don't believe in God. I mean, God. You know, really? God's word. It's a little archaic, don't you think? He said, well, let's back up. What's in the Bible that you don't think is true? Maybe I can help you out. I go, I don't know. I never read the Bible. He goes, then you're not an atheist. You're a moron. Right? And any man who suffers from an anger problem knows, the hair on your neck stands up, your stomach gets a little tight. I think I want to punch this guy for saying that. But then I would have lost access to some really nice golf courses. So I said, how so? He said, I'll give you the short answer. To discount and throw away an infinite God in an infinite universe, you yourself have to have infinite knowledge of the entire universe. It's a self-defeating argument. You cannot defend an absolute negative. What you're denying exists as an omniscient being. In order to deny that, you yourself have to be omniscient. You can't defend it. And I looked at that man and said, what? He said, trust me, Jeff, I say this out of love. You are not smart enough to be an atheist. I said, yeah. And he said, I'd like to help you out. I go to a church in Denton, Texas, Tom Nelson's, Denton Bible. He said he teaches the Bible. He does not tell you to check your brain at the door. He makes you reach intellectually, and he says, I think you would enjoy that. And I said, will it cost me any money? He goes, nope, I'll sign you up. And then, can I send you a Bible? I go, if it doesn't cost me anything, you send me whatever you want. So the Bible came. I threw that in a junk drawer. The tapes started coming. And for a year and a half, those tapes came. And we had a friendship. It was basically revolved around comedy and golf. And he never once said to me, I sent you tapes. Did you listen to them? I sent you a Bible. Did you open it up? He'd end every conversation the same way. Hey, how are you and Tammy doing? I go, not too good, Phil. We're going to get that divorce at some point. I got to fill those papers out. For a year and a half. And we went home and we tried. We tried. And summer came that year, and she says, I'm taking the kids to Ohio to go with to be at my parents. And while I'm gone, you got to get your life together. If you don't want to do comedy, don't do comedy. But you got to do something. We're losing the house. We were a couple months out of our mortgage at that point, and they were contacting us. And I said, I'll work on it. And she gathered up these Bible tapes. Year and a half's worth. They were everywhere, on the fridge, under the sink. You ladies can imagine. She's been cleaning around them for a year and a half, collecting dust, everything. She gathers them all up, and she brings them into the living room, and she throws them on the floor before she leaves, and she says, you either listen to these things or I'm throwing them out. Now I got a bunch of God's word sitting on the floor, and this struggle comes in. It's nothing but biblical trash. That's when at one point my head screamed at me, it's biblical trash, and I start to walk away, and it's like open one up. So I finally just walk over there like it's on fire, and I rip one open, and I throw them on the floor, and it's Ecclesiastes. And it starts out meaningless, meaningless. And I went, what's meaningless? What's meaningless? And it went on to talk about Solomon's conclusions and the book of Ecclesiastes. And years later, Christians said to me, the first time I shared this at a church, somebody grabbed me, God used Ecclesiastes? God used the book of Ecclesiastes to lead you to Jesus. I go, I don't understand you. He goes, well, it's a fairly cynical book. I go, well, you didn't know me like God knew me. Trust me. I found Ecclesiastes the most exhilarating thing I'd ever heard. Meaningless, meaningless. It's all meaningless. Everything is meaningless. There's no purpose. Everything. I was like, and then what I got out of that first tape was this. Life without God will have no meaning. Without meaning to your life, there's no purpose to your life. Without purpose to your life, you might as well off yourself. And I'm thinking, wow, that's in the Bible? So I ripped open every envelope looking for more Ecclesiastes tapes. There's got to be another one in here. So, and I put that in there, and this is it. This was another one of Solomon's conclusions. Again, paraphrasing what was in the book by this pastor. But it was, if happiness was an act of human will, we'd all be happy. You ask anybody in this room what you want out of life. I just want to be happy. Well, what is that? How do you define that? If it's the next iPod, the next man, the next woman, the next job, the next car, the next ad infinitum, you're in for a long haul while you're down here on earth. Solomon's conclusions were nothing nothing of this earth will ever give you lasting joy and happiness outside of God. So I'm sitting there listening to this, and I knew this because I did this. I went to the mirror, and I went to affirm yourself. Oh, what a load of garbage that turned out to be. All I wanted to know is I'm listening to this, and something is happening inside of me. And at one point, I wanted to run on the lawn and hold the Bible up. What a book! I was doing studies in my car, staring with my leg, making notes in my Bible. I almost met Jesus before I met Jesus. I mean, people, I'm running them off the road. They're waving at me one finger at a time. I'm like, I love you too, you know. Wow. I have no idea why there was this moment in my life where God said, this guy has had enough. For the first time, I realized that I wanted an explanation for all these years. I wanted somebody to explain to me God so that I got it, so that I understood it, and it made a difference in my life. But the truth was I needed a revelation from God. Without the revelation, the explanation means nothing. And all of a sudden, everything was starting to change. The way I talked to people, the way I looked at people.
Ecclesiastes 12:8 gives the final assessment, which is the same as the first assessment in Ecclesiastes 1:2. Everything is futile, fleeting, meaningless, and absurd. The conclusion helps us understand the purpose behind exposing the meaninglessness of life. Solomon wants us to realize that God imposed a curse on the world to show us the meaninglessness of following our own devices, and ultimately to drive us to him. Thus, the point of Ecclesiastes, like every book of the Old Testament, is ultimately to make you wise for salvation through faith in Jesus Christ, per 2 Timothy 3:15. When we see death up close in hospital visits, the suffering of a loved one, or the passing of a friend, it signals there is something better out there. That's the point of Ecclesiastes. Everything is meaningless without Jesus. We see this in the conclusion. Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes to shepherd the reader with words that are pleasing, true, convicting, and wise. His words are like goads, spiked sticks that prod cattle down the right path. That's an excerpt from Christ-Centered Exposition Exalting Jesus in Ecclesiastes, authors David Atkin, Jonathan Atkin. The human drive for meaning without God is ultimately a nonsensical mirage. Why do we have an indwelt desire, hunger for meaning? What is that? If we are purposeless pond scum, our desire for purpose is nonsensical. Why would beings created of only natural processes have a desire for meaning? You may find a lot of discussion among secularists about meaning, but they never really get to the point. I mean, why do we have a drive for meaning in the first place? Within the Christian worldview, it makes sense. There is an alternate meaning. We can have salvation and experience a God forever. We can be part of his glorious, infinite plan. Without that, our desires for meaning are a mirage. If we chase wealth, it's vapor. If we chase success, it's vapor. If we chase love, even then, that is vapor. But if these things are ultimate, if they can contribute to some type of ultimate plan, if they are forever, then that meaning isn't a mirage. A naturalist worldview is just deeply unsatisfying. It doesn't provide us the why. Why do we have deep desires for meaning if we're merely purposeless biological beings that evolved of natural processes, whose thoughts exist only of natural processes, whose every decision and choice is predetermined? That's what Stephen Hawking concluded. Christianity makes a whole lot more sense. Christ is king, every knee will bow. Absolutely.